What's up, everyone? Welcome to another episode of Backup Fantasy Sports. It is Wednesday, September 14th. My name is Ewan, and today we are going to get into some F1 fantasy with a look back at the Belgian, Dutch, and Italian Grand Prix winners and losers episode. On vacation for a couple of weeks there, so no preview or review podcast, so I decided to put it all into one podcast and get it out today as a triple header review after a crazy 3 weeks in the F1 world. So what did we miss in Formula One? Well, in Belgium, it was a Max Sergio Carlos podium. And then in the Netherlands, Max won again with Max, George, and Charles getting on the podium. And then in Monza, it was Max, Charles, and George once again. So just get right into the winners and losers because you all watched the race. I was watching the highlights. No need to go into an in-depth recap there. So winners right off the top. Is there anyone else? Max Verstappen, 116-point lead in the driver's standings now. 5 wins in a row. He's won 2 of the last 3 races despite having grid penalties. Since Australia, where he retired for the second time in the first 3 races, if you can remember all the way back to the beginning of the year when Red Bull had reliability issues, he has been on the podium in 12 of 13 races, and he's won 10 of those 13 races as well. Absolute dominance from the Flying Dutchman. He's well on his way to his second world championship. Won the last race under safety car. He's been the top point scorer in fantasy this season with 660 points, and in the last 5, he's got 248. He's even the best bang for your buck guy in fantasy right now with 1.63 points per million. There's not a lot of analysis that I can put into Verstappen right now. He is the best driver on the grid in the best car, and he is well worth the 30 plus million in your fantasy lineups down the stretch, as I'm not sure when he's going to lose next. That's how dominant the Red Bull can be. I mean, he started all the way back in 14th or 15th for Spa and still just sliced and diced his way through the field. No problem at all. Next up in the winners is George Russell, Mr. Consistency. He's getting it done for Mercedes in his first year with the Silver Arrows. He's now 7 points off Sergio Perez for third in the driver standings, and he's only 16 points behind Charles Leclerc for second. That would be a massive result for the Brit if he could get on to the top 3 for the driver standing in his first year with Mercedes. Over his last 5 races, he's been 3rd in France, 3rd in Hungary, 4th in Belgium, 2nd in Netherlands, and 3rd in Italy. He has the second most points in fantasy this season with 485, and now he has a top 5 finish in every race this season except Silverstone, where he retired. The weird thing for Russell in F1 fantasy is his cost is like the 23.8 million is just kind of a weird price point for me, because I would rather have the full-on winning upside of Verstappen, just 7-8 million more than Russell costs right now. And then you can also just kind of go down a few million, 5 or 6 million, to get Perez in a better car, Sainz in a better car, Leclerc in a better car. Russell is performing better than those 3 drivers. He's obviously more consistent with the top 5 finish in every race except Silverstone, but he never really finds his way into my F1 fantasy lineup. And maybe I should make a conscious change to try and fix that over the season's final 6 races. Can't believe there's only 6 races left. I would say it's getting down to it, but both championships are done and dusted at this point. So there's still a lot of intriguing battles to see up and down the grid. But as for Red Bull and Max Verstappen, they have that locked up. And then the final winner is not based over the last 3 weeks, but mostly on Monza this weekend. And it's Nick DeVries and Williams. I'm going to throw them all in. The 2019 F2 champion had a practice session with Aston Martin on Friday morning, then woke up on Saturday and Williams were like, hey, Alex Albon has appendicitis. Can you come and qualify for us? And he said, yeah, of course I can. So he jumped into Williams for qualifying, made it to Q2, finished 9th in the race, got points in his first F1 race, and I think he has, pun intended, put himself in the driver's seat for that second Williams spot for 2023. If Williams do not renew Nicholas Latifi's contract, and they shouldn't, because this needs to be a performance-based sport, not a moneybags sport. I think Albon and De Vries pairing for 2023 and beyond is quite exciting if you're a Williams fan. On the Ringer F1 podcast, on their Italian Grand Prix review show, Kevin Clark had Spanners on, and Spanners was saying that the Williams car isn't all that bad. They've just had quite a crop of bad drivers in their car, and I think that's starting to prove true over the second half of the season. I mean, for Nick De Vries to come in and just finish 9th in a Williams right off the bat shows the potential of that car. Yes, there were grid penalties and there were DNFs on the day, but Nicholas Latifi's been driving all season. He doesn't have a point. And Alex Albon, hopefully he's starting to get better. He had appendicitis, and then I think he also had some respiratory issues. So hopefully he is on the mend and we can see him back in Singapore in the Williams. But Albon has 3 points finishes in 2022, and over his last 4 races, Albon's finished 12th, 13th, 17th, and 10th. For fantasy purposes, Albon has 61 points over the last 5 races. That's 11th on the grid, and his 1.58 points per million over the last 5 races is actually the second best rate in that metric among the 20 drivers who are lining up every Sunday in our squads. So I think with De Vries and Albon, they can continue the Williams development and this like momentum upward trend that they've been on, with signing Albon over the summer break to a multi-year extension and hopefully getting a new driver in that second seat. Nick De Vries looks like he is going to be leading that race. There's also Logan Sargent in that battle, depending on some of his results as the season winds along. So that was the winners there with Max Verstappen, George Russell, and Nick De Vries / Williams. Now moving on to the sadder part of the episode is the losers. And just like there should only be one winner to start off with, there can only be one loser, and that is Mr. Charles Leclerc. He has not come out of the summer break flying like we were all hoping he would to make this a title race. It has not gone well for Ferrari. It has not gone well for Charles. It's crazy to think that after 3 races, he had such a big points gap that there were people thinking that the championship could be over already. He's got like a 36 point lead. How is Red Bull going to overcome that? Well, Red Bull didn't have to overcome anything. Ferrari just continuously ran over their foot backwards and forwards. It was like an oddity at first, and now it's just been like you cover your eyes every time a pit stop happens for Ferrari, or you hear the team radio come up on the Sky Sports coverage. You're just like, oh no, what is about to happen? When you see Charles Leclerc team radio, Carlos Sainz team radio, you just dread the worst. So Leclerc took on grid penalties in Spa. That was a tactical move because Spa is fantastic place to overtake, as Max Verstappen showed us. But unfortunately for Leclerc, it did not pay off. They kind of screwed around with their strategy once again, and then they tried to get him the fastest lap for no reason at all. I mean, there was just not going to happen. And then he dropped from 5th to 6th after a 5-second time penalty because Ferrari wanted to win the fastest lap for some reason. Then in the Dutch Grand Prix, Should have been a good bounce back spot for Ferrari, but again, couldn't capitalize. Tough race again for Leclerc. He won the pole in Monza, so that was good, but also couldn't convert. Monza is the race you want to win if you drive for Ferrari, and it looked good for a while, but the race ended under a safety car. So Ferrari employed a different strategy to Red Bull, once again raising all of these questions. Is that Ferrari pit wall going to be here in 2023? For Charles Leclerc's sanity, I hope not, but that is a different conversation for a different day. As far as the Drivers' Championship, that is gone. It's honestly been gone for a while. I think a lot of us F1 fans were just hoping that after the summer break, Ferrari they'd had a whole month off. They could have thought about what went wrong in the back half of the first half of the season and fix it. It has not been fixed. Red Bull have realized how close they were to pulling off the double world championships in 2022, and they have grabbed it with both hands, and they are going to take home both championships this season. As for fantasy-wise, Leclerc, over the last 5 races, he scored less than Verstappen, Russell, Hamilton, Sainz, and Perez. He was kind of the golden boy of fantasy over the first 10 races of the season, because he was just 8, 9, 10 races of the season, because he was under the 20 million price point for the turbo driver, so you could just get double his points. But Ferrari's strategy, their questionable tactics have kind of screwed up Leclerc over the season. So now he's scored, over the last 5 races, he's 6th out of the big 3 teams here. He's still the best bang for your buck on the grid for this season, but over the last 5 races, he actually is down to 8th in that metric, and he's at 1.12 points per million. So he's not the value that he once was when he was consistently, I would say consistently, but he has 2 podiums in his last 10 races I saw on Formula1.com. So he has not been consistent for a long time, and it's not looking good for Leclerc. I know every F1 article says it's looking really slim that Leclerc will win. I just don't see how that is even close to possible. He needs to be looking at Sergio Perez and George Russell behind him, because if he doesn't finish second this season, that would be pretty big disappointment for Ferrari and for Leclerc, considering how the season started for the Monegasque driver. Next loser here is Lewis Hamilton. This might be a little controversial. Hamilton's been a lot better in the last 10 races compared to the first 6 of the year, but for me personally, I was really expecting Hamilton to kind of kick on in the second part of the year and potentially grab a win. A strategic error by the Mercedes team cost him a chance in the Netherlands, where he pitted onto mediums while almost all of his competitors went onto the soft tire. He has the 3rd most fantasy points scored over the last 5 races, so he's been getting it done if he's in your lineup, which he shouldn't be, because Max Verstappen is a little bit cheaper and getting way more points. But just in case he is, it just doesn't feel like the momentum is with the 7-time world champion at this moment. So he's a no-go in fantasy for me. The redeeming factor for Hamilton is Singapore is up next and could offer Hamilton a chance at claiming his first win of the 2022 season. He's won 4 times at the circuit, including 2017 and 2018, and we are returning to Singapore for the first time since 2019. And actually, Sebastian Vettel is defending champion of this racetrack, so it's been quite a while since we were in this part of the world. Final loser here is another veteran along with Lewis Hamilton. It's Daniel Ricciardo. Since the summer break, he's lost his seat at McLaren. He's gone 15th, 17th, and then had a DNF here in Monza on Sunday, where he won last year. He has 1 finish inside the top 6 all season. That was in the 3rd race of the year in Australia. He's had a couple of 8ths, a couple of 9ths, but it's just not been a season to remember for Ricciardo. Can't really blame. I'm not sure I agree with how McLaren handled the whole thing, but results-wise, you can't blame them for what has been coming out of Ricciardo's car this year. On the season, he's got 86 fantasy points for our F1 squad, so that's the fourth lowest on the grid. He is 0.38 points per million. That is dead last. And over the last 5 races, he has accumulated -2 points. If I was Daniel Ricciardo, I would try to get that 2023 seat locked up ASAP, because this is not the way you want to end a season without a job. Just my personal opinion there. Moving on to a full fantasy recap count of my team. It's been a pretty miserable 3 weeks, I'm not going to lie. 155 points in Belgium, 188 in Netherlands, and 186 in Monza. Been picking the wrong turbo captain every single week. It has not been pretty over here. Right now, I am running Verstappen, Sainz, Norris, Stroll, Magnussen, and Ferrari. I kind of backed myself into a corner with my subs, and it just has not worked out. I'm probably going to be activating the wild card here with 2 weeks until Singapore, trying to fix this mess that I've created with Mercedes, Red Bull, and Charles Leclerc all on a race streak heading into Singapore. I can definitely see a world where I am running triple Red Bull with Perez, Verstappen, and Max. I'm probably going to try and get on Albon if he stays healthy, and even if not, hopefully that'll still be Nick de Vries, so we can get him in the Williams. But Magnussen's just not getting it done. I was in on Stroll, and then he's just kind of been terrible since I brought him in as well. I really have to figure out this bottom half of my lineup over the last 6 weeks of the season. It's 2 weeks until the next race, so good time to activate the wild card. It does feel like the price points are not moving. Pretty sure in the F1 tracker, the fantasy tracker Discord, F1fantasytracker.com, in their Discord, it's been almost confirmed that Play On have just stopped the price rises after some bot interference throughout the season. So they have to figure that out as well. And I need to do some more research about Singapore, see who this track is likely to suit with the new cars. Like, obviously, I just said Lewis Hamilton has done well here in the past, but that was with the old regulations, and obviously Mercedes do not have the top car on the grid anymore. So it's the first time since 2019 that we'll see racing in Singapore. So got to get some research in. Hopefully we'll have that all sorted out by the time the Singapore Grand Prix preview podcast comes out in a couple of weeks, which, just checking, looks like September 29th or September 30th will be that one. But yeah, it's gonna take some fixing. It has not been a pretty, like myself, like Daniel Ricciardo, not a pretty 3 races out of the summer break. But next up is the Singapore Grand Prix. It's over 2 weeks away. Qualifying is going to be on October 1st at 9 a.m. Eastern American time, and the race is October 2nd at 8 a.m. Eastern. So lots of stuff to unpack from the last 3 weeks. Hopefully I didn't take up too much of your time today. You can follow me on Twitter at UIN or you out, EUAN or you out. You can like and subscribe to the podcast on Spotify, Google, Overcast, and Apple. And you should enjoy the next couple of weeks off. If you bought F1 Manager 2022, you can dive into that game. Or if you're just playing the regular game like myself, you can get into Singapore and see what that track is going to look like after a couple of years away. But I hope you have enjoyed this triple header. I hope you take a weekend off and enjoy an F1 free weekend. But once again, thanks for listening, and I will talk to you next time.